Hello and welcome. I'm going to be playing the solo mode of Nut Hunt. Um, and so, first, familiarize yourself with the multiplayer rules because your turn actions will be exactly like in the multiplayer game. It's the exact same scoring as the multiplayer game, the exact same trigger for the end of the game, so it's very similar. The only difference is that there's an Atoma that will be taking the actions um, for the non-person player. So there's three difficulty variants that we recommend. We have the standard difficulty, and these are determined by the size of the Atoma starting hand and how many squirrels the Atoma has on the board. So we have the standard, the intermediate, and the expert. I'm going to be playing the intermediate today. I'm slightly over 50% match win percentage in the intermediate, about 55-60%. But it's still a tricky challenge. So there, you set up the game as usual. So we have a hand with a lot of Mouse Meadow today. So Mouse Meadow the Crag is right next to each other. Mouse Meadow the Tangle is a little bit further away, and Mouse Meadow and Briar Run is right next to each other. I think we're actually going to keep Mouse Meadow and the Tangle because this is on the way. So we're setting the same as usual, where we are keeping two objective cards and discarding the third. And then we will start with two squirrels on the board and four nut cards in our hand. So I think that we want. So we're heavy on acorns. We have three tiles that all need acorns. So that's nice. I do want to get a walnut just in case on the first turn the fox moves into Mouse Meadow, so we aren't really stuck without any cards that we can play in our hand. So the way that the Atoma works is the Atoma, based on the difficulty, will start with a different number of starting cards in their hand. In this case, since we're playing intermediate, the Atoma will start with three cards in their hand. This is both the Atoma's starting starting placement of squirrels, as well as their hand for scoring at the end of the game. So the way that it works is the Atoma places squirrels on each endpoint of cards that they have. And if you would ever place an Atoma squirrel where the fox is, you just don't place that squirrel. So you get a little bit of a bonus. So the Atoma starts in intermediate, starts with up to 6 squirrels on the board. And in this case, that is what is going to happen. So he's going across the top right now. And then we have the orchard for the Atoma's second placement. Another one on Dreamer's Dell, and then one on Hickory Haunt, which is, where is Hickory Haunt today? They're right there at the bottom. So the Atoma is very far to the bottom, and we're going across the top. So it's not very likely. Sometimes in the single player, you will really be trying to mess up the Atoma with a very expertly timed hassling of the fox. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case this game. It looks like this is going to be a pure race where we're trying to secure our territory and get to 4 nests before the Atoma does. And sometimes that's the way that these games play out. And part of Nut Hunt is sort of like understanding the strategy on top of the variants and building your plan of action around what cards you're dealt, quite literally. So in single player, in solo, the player always goes first. So we're going to start by rolling the fox die and start our turn. All right, so the fox moves right up here. We need walnuts and pecans about the same. We need walnuts a little bit more because we have 2 tiles that need walnuts and 1 tile that needs the other. So let's go ahead and grab 2 walnuts, and then we'll go ahead and spend a walnut and an acorn, and we're going to drop a squirrel right here, and we're looking to nest up pretty quick. So for the Atoma's turn, all you do for their turn is you flip over the top card of the objective deck, and you place a squirrel on each endpoint. So the Atoma would get that's a whole bag of squirrels. 1 squirrel on Briar Run, and 1 squirrel on Willow Wallow. And this card does not go into the Atoma hand. We just discard it off to the side. So the fox doesn't move on the Atoma turn, so you have a little bit more control in solo player. It's a little bit puzzlier because you know a little bit more about where the fox could be on your next turn, so you can set up some really choice hassles if you're so inclined. So we're hoping the fox goes down, which is great for us because this will, now the Atoma essentially needs to get scattered back onto Dreamer Dell or draw Dreamer's Dell again in order to complete these objectives. So the Atoma squirrels, if they would move, you just randomize their movement, and it follows the same rules as usual. So squirrels can't go right back where the fox came from. So we're going to re-randomize that one. That squirrel goes there, and then this squirrel also goes up there. All right. And then we get 2 chestnuts for our trouble, which is pretty nice. And then let's drop another. Let's just finish our nest on the crag. I don't really see a reason not to. We don't really want chestnuts, but that's fine. So, this game is looking like it's going to be a little bit of a race, which sometimes that is the case. And now we're going to do the Atomas next turn. Flip over this card. All right, the Pine Barrens and the Giant Toadstool. All right, now it is our turn. Move that card off to the side. And a 3. All right, so the fox comes down here. So we randomize where this Atoma squirrel would go. Of course, re-rolling 2, or actually a 6. So the squirrel would bounce off the side, just like the fox would normally. And we get to get whatever we want. So we want pecans and acorns. So let's get an acorn and let's get a pecan, and then let's spend an acorn and a chestnut. And the reason that we're actually doing this is we may end up, instead of scattering here, we have to think about it. If the fox moves up on the Atoma turn, we might end up wanting to move to Dreamer's Dell and hassle the fox, just to sort of mess with the Atoma's plan, since we have good knowledge about what they're going for. All right, so Fairy Ring, and another one down on Hickory Haunt. So the Atoma comes on pretty quickly. It starts off slow, but you can tell it starts to get a little bit overwhelming. So now we're going to roll this die. That is a 3. All right, so that's kind of good for us. So we're going to draw 2 chestnut. And then we are going to spend a chestnut and a acorn. So we want more acorn. That's sort of what we're short on. And then that will be our turn. Now we'll take the Atoma's turn, flip this die. The Atoma gets Goose Glade and the Orchard. So the Atoma got their first nest down here on the Orchard. So, this game's a race. It's not always a race. Well, it's always somewhat of a race, but this game is more of a race than usual, just because we aren't really overlapping. All right, so the fox came down here. So we want some acorn, and we will just spend them right away to drop a squirrel on Mouse Meadow. Now we will go with the Atoma. All right, the Atoma got Birch Grove and Goose Glade. Now we will move the fox. So if the fox moves to Dreamer's Dell, that's when we're going to want to finish our nest. Perfect. That's great for us. So it is unfortunate because it's a little nut inefficient, but because we need to spend 3 chestnut to trade in for an acorn. But this is a great time to finish that nest because the Atoma can't scatter its squirrels onto Dreamer's Dell, which we know the Atoma wants to be on. So so we're really sort of maximizing that, messing with the Atoma with this placement right here. So the first Atoma squirrel is going to be a 6, so that's going to be the Birch Grove, and the second Atoma squirrel is going to be a 3, so that is also the Birch Grove, and the Atoma got a second nest. All right, so it is a race, but I think that this move on our part, really made it hard for the Atoma to win this game, but we will see what happens. So let's flip this over for the Atoma's placement, and the Atoma, I'm not looking at the board very well. It gets Willow Wallow and then Muckville Marsh. So the Atoma is spreading out a little bit. But again, a lot of tiles with 2 squirrels on them for this Atoma. So we will see what we're able to do. All right, so the Atoma came right down here. All right, so we do need a couple pecans. So we need 3 pecan total. So this is kind of rounding out our pecan needs. So we're going to get a couple pecan and walnut, and drop a squirrel right here. Now it's likely that we're going to have to take a turn off of placing squirrels, unless we get really lucky and get some. We need 2 more acorn and 2 more walnut, but otherwise we're going to have to take a turn off placing squirrels in order to make our nest. Oh no, that's exactly what we didn't want to happen. So the Otoma did end up getting a new squirrel on Dreamer's Dell, and they got a squirrel up on Fairy Ring. All right, so we now want a 1 or a 4 to break up that territory again. A 5, that's not bad. That's on to Hickory Hunt. Oops. So we'll just leave the fox right there. First, Otoma squirrel needs to scatter. That's a 4, straight up to Briar Run. And now the Otoma's going to end up with a nest. Since the Otoma can't go this way, I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3 to here and 4, 5, 6 to here for the second squirrel, because that's still randomized and it still is the same probability. That way we just don't have to roll again. So 1, 2, 3 right to here, and the Otoma gets a nest on Rabbit Patch, which is a very important tile for them. Fine. It's actually good for us because now we got 2 acorn and we can spend them right away, and we can place a squirrel, build a nest up on Mouse Meadow. All right, so we just need some walnuts now to close out this game, and we need to hope that the Otoma territory gets broken up a little bit, although I'm not sure that it's going to. They do need Hickory Haunt, so there's a good chance that they won't end up. That was not what we were supposed to do. It's the Otoma's turn. What am I doing? I'm cheating. I'm cheating myself. All right, so we're going to flip this over. The Otoma gets another squirrel onto Rabbit Patch and a squirrel up on the Tangle, so that's fine. All right, and this game, as you can tell, we didn't scout for any objectives this game. It really depends on what sort of, if we have a turn off, it could be a good time to scout an objective. Oh man, and the Otoma might be about to end the game because they're getting in. Oh, that's the end of the game. So you just have to scatter this last squirrel. So we hope that it doesn't go here because that'll make their runs. So looks like we got pretty lucky at the end here. Oh yeah, we got super lucky, and we just crushed this game. Which happens sometimes. This can be a little bit of a race against the Otoma, right? Because the Otoma has the Rabbit Patch on these 2, and they failed both of these. This one they failed because of that Hickory Haunt miss. So that's -2, 4, 6, plus 2, 4, 6, 8 for a total of 2 points for the Otoma, whereas we are sitting pretty with this objective achieved for 3 points and this objective achieved for 3, 4, 5. So that's 8 points plus 2, 4, 6. That's 14 points to the Otoma's measly 2 points. And that's just sometimes how it goes, right? If the Otoma were a player, they would have moved the squirrel up there, but they also wouldn't have as many squirrels on the board. And again, at intermediate, sometimes it feels like a race. I do think we had some minor strategic decisions once we decided that it was going to be a race. Right timing when we built this nest, I think, was pretty clever, even though it ended up not mattering that much. And that was sort of like the decisions that we really faced in this game. But yeah, so this is solo mode of Nut Hunt, and the texture of your hand versus where the Otoma is building can very much change the feel of the game. And if you have the time, I encourage checking it out. It's also a great way to sort of learn some skills for especially the 2-player game, because you're positioning around where your opponent is going to be, and you have a little bit more control over the fox. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed solo player Nut Hunt at intermediate. We will count that as a big old